Today, we're diving into a massive paradigm shift in Philippine law. We're talking about Tan-Andal versus Andal, decided in May 2021. For the longest time, the rules around dissolving a marriage here were, frankly, notoriously rigid. But this landmark ruling, authored by Justice Leonen, absolutely changed the game. It completely transformed not just the legal hurdles of ending a marriage, but how the state views our human dignity, personal autonomy, and the family unit itself.
So we're kicking things off with a huge question, one that actually haunted the legal system for years. Does a broken marriage legitimately require a doctor's diagnosis to be legally voided? Think about that for a second. For decades, if a marriage failed because of psychological incapacity, the courts literally demanded clinical medical proof. You couldn't just say, hey, this relationship is fundamentally broken. No, you needed a medical expert to stamp it with a clinical diagnosis. And as you can imagine, that raised some really serious questions about privacy, autonomy, and what a legal marriage actually requires.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at Article 36 of the Family Code. This is the law that covers psychological incapacity as a ground to nullify a marriage. Now, what's super fascinating here is the original intent behind the law. The Supreme Court pointed out that because intimate human relationships are so complex and variable, Article 36 was actually meant to be humane. It was designed to be resilient and to be applied on a case-to-case basis. It was supposed to be a compassionate legal remedy for marriages that were basically void from the start because someone just couldn't comply with essential marital obligations.
Section 1, the rigid past, the Molina era. Remember that humane, compassionate intent we just talked about? Well, it kind of got completely lost along the way. Back in 1997, a case called Republic versus Court of Appeals and Molina laid down these incredibly strict guidelines. Under the Molina doctrine, getting a marriage nullified became deeply restrictive and intrusive. It placed this massive burden of proof squarely on the plaintiff. Because the Constitution treats marriage as legally inviolable, the courts demanded a strict, medically identifiable root cause for any psychological incapacity. Looking back, the Supreme Court realized this approach was just way too rigid and honestly a huge intrusion on personal liberty and human dignity.
Section 2. The Annulment marriage dispute, a 20-year battle.
Let's look at the actual inciting incident that challenged this whole rigid setup. The timeline of Rosanna and Mario Andal's case is pretty staggering. They got married in Makati City way back in December 1995. Eventually, the relationship completely broke down. Fast forward to 2007, a regional trial court actually voided the marriage due to Mario's psychological incapacity, and they gave Rosanna full custody of their daughter. But, of course, the battle wasn't over. In 2010, the Court of Appeals flipped that decision and kept them legally bound. It literally took until 2021, more than 2 decades after they tied the knot, for the Supreme Court to step in with the historic ruling we're looking at today.
Section 3, a legal paradigm shift, the Tan-Andal doctrine.
All right, this brings us right to the climax of our explainer. This is where Justice Leonen's monumental restatement totally dismantles the old framework. Just look at this stark contrast. On one side, you have the old Molina doctrine, strict medical focus, rigid and super intrusive on autonomy. It basically worked against the law's original intent. But on the flip side, we now have the Tan-Andal doctrine. Here, the court officially pivoted back to a humane, resilient, and purely legal understanding of psychological incapacity. They essentially said, look, science and society have evolved, and it's time our legal doctrine caught up.
So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Psychological incapacity is now firmly, officially, a legal concept. It is not a strict medical illness. The court ruled that you do not need an expert's medical opinion anymore, especially one just based on secondhand information from the other spouse, to prove a marriage is void. It's all about an enduring legal inability to perform marital obligations. It's not about slapping a clinical diagnosis from a medical textbook onto a broken relationship. That is a massive shift.
Section 4. Redefining the family and state protection.
Now, the ripple effects of this ruling, they go way beyond just tweaking the definition of incapacity. It actually fundamentally redefines how the state sees the family. Listen to this powerful quote straight from the decision. The family should be protected under the Constitution regardless of its structure, period. The court acknowledged that while past rulings fiercely defended the institution of marriage, the family itself is the basic autonomous social institution, meaning it deserves protection no matter what shape or form it takes.
So what does this actually mean for us in the real world? It means that a valid, protected family exists whether parents choose to stay married or if they decide to go their separate ways. Both situations are equally entitled to state protection. The Supreme Court made this profound point that the right to choose who we are intimate with is a core piece of our personal autonomy and liberty. It's an inherent part of human dignity. The state really has no business interfering with those deeply personal choices unless public interest is genuinely in danger.
Section 5, the property resolution, the Paranaki duplex. Let's ground this in some tangible, real-world impact. Because let's be honest, when marriages fall apart, the division of assets is usually where high-level legal theory hits harsh reality. Take the Andal's dispute over a duplex in Paranaque. The facts of the case show this property wasn't bought through Mario and Rosanna's joint efforts. It was actually a 315 square meter lot donated in 1998 by Rosanna's aunt, Rita M. Tan. The deed split it between Rosanna and her dad. But when the title for Rosanna's portion was issued, it explicitly said Rosanna L. Tan-Andal, married to Mario Andal. Because of those three little words, Mario argued he had a legal stake in the property.
But here is a super surprising and incredibly important fact for anyone navigating property law. The Supreme Court ruled that if a property is acquired through just one party's effort or via donation without the other spouse contributing, it belongs entirely to the acquiring spouse. They clarified that having the phrase married to printed on a property title, it's literally just a description of your civil status. It does absolutely nothing to prove co-ownership. So Rosanna was declared the sole and absolute owner of that land and the duplex. Mario didn't get a single share.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. We tracked this incredible shift from a really rigid, clinical view of marriage to one that actually prioritizes human dignity, autonomy, and a much more realistic view of what a family is. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder after today's explainer. As the law continues to evolve to fiercely protect our personal autonomy and our right to choose our intimate partners, how is this going to reshape the future of the Filipino family in the decades to come? Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the world around you.